In other international news, Brazil inaugurated a new president today. The swearing-in ceremony for leftist Luiz Inacio Lula de Silva was held under tight security. That was due to threats of violence by supporters of his far-right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. Lula narrowly won his third presidential term in October, and he faces some major challenges. CBC's JP Tasker has more on the return to power of a very familiar face in Brazilian politics.
Yeah, he's so familiar, he's only known by one name, Lula, in Brazil. He has taken over the presidential sash. It's a triumphant return to an office for, his third term. That's unprecedented in Brazil. He's been away from it for more than a decade. Road to power. Only a few months ago, really taking on Jair Bolsonaro, as you mentioned, a real far-right controversial character. Lula himself is a leftist. He started out as a trade unionist. He's been involved in the Workers' Party for quite literally decades. I was looking through some tape today. You can see him running for office in the 70s. He is certainly a very important figure in Brazil, and he rode to victory, again, based on his support among the working classes and the impoverished people of the country, largely in the north. And under his past leadership, the economy was booming, and now it's really in a fragile state, Natasha, and he really steps in a tenuous time for Brazil. The nasty election campaign that had him take on Bolsonaro really divided the country. Bolsonaro, deeply polarizing, but he does have legions of supporters, and he has refused to concede defeat in that election campaign. And some of his voters have said, without evidence, that the election was rigged. That's not unlike another president here in the United States. There have been riots all across the country, particularly in the capital of Brasilia. 4 people have been arrested, accused of trying to oust Lula in a coup. Police were out today. The bomb squad, they were finding some makeshift explosives scattered around the capital there where Lula was set to be sworn in. So it is a very tense time in the country, and a lot of people are very anxious, worried about the future of the country, and hopeful, at least Lula's supporters, hopeful that he can turn things around.
Well, let's talk about that, because you've got this context and this backdrop of all of this conflict going on. And, there's so many distractions, one might say, but Lula has really clarified what his agenda is. So what are some of the top priorities for him? Yeah,
a lot of his supporters were happy to see him elected because they figured it was kind of a triumph of democracy over fascism. Bolsonaro was a very totalitarian leader, if you will. And one of the policies that was really controversial was his approach to the environment. And Lula has said that safeguarding Brazil's rainforests may well be the defining issue of his presidency. He's promised to rein in illegal loggers, miners, land grabbers, because Bolsonaro really scaled back and weakened environmental protections in the world's largest rainforest. He opened up indigenous lands to economic development. The deforestation rate was massive under his tenure. So a lot of climate activists in Brazil and around the world, frankly, are hoping that Lula sticks to his promises to repeal some of those policies. But there will be opposition to Natasha. Bolsonaro won 5 of the 9 states in the Brazilian Amazon because there are people in that region that are fearful this environmental push will tank the economy, will put a lot of people out of work.
CBC's JP Tasker reporting from Washington.